I think we can get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sasha. I'm here today with Daniel and Fabian. We'll be talking about artificial intelligence and how it is enhancing your digital workplace. Just a couple of housekeeping items. We are recording the webinar today. We'll provide a link to the recording and a copy of the slide deck later this afternoon. We'll try to keep the session to 45 minutes. We'll leave about 10 to 15 minutes at the end for questions. Don't hold back. Please submit them in the questions pane of the GoToWebinar panel. If it's something relevant, we'll answer it during the webinar, but otherwise we'll get to it at the end. And with that, I think, Daniel, you guys can introduce yourself and get started.
Yes, let's get started here. I'm going to shut something down here, and we are getting started. So good morning, everyone. My name is Daniel Cohen-Dimani. I'm a partner here at Weden Digital. I have a lot of experience around digital transformation. I've been in that space for almost close to 30 years now. In the technology space. I have a lot of experience with Office 365, SharePoint, Dynamics, Azure, all things Microsoft. And recently I built up my interest around artificial intelligence and machine learning. I've always been passionate about the productivity in the modern workplace, right? That's really what we do here at Weden Digital, is helping our clients be more productive. And you know, I started my digital transformation career about 18 years ago with SharePoint, really before anyone could even spell the word, right? So that's a little unique. And a little bit of something fun about me, I was a private pilot in my early days. So that was a long time ago. But with that, I'm joined with Fabian. Fabian, it's exciting to be together. I think it's the first webinar we're doing where two of us, right?
Exactly, yes, it is.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and something unique.
Certainly. So my name is Fabian Williams. As you can see on the screen here, you can reach out to me via Twitter at Fabian Williams, and certainly send me an email as well. As Daniel, I do have quite a little bit of experience as well. I'm in this space. I just commented from a little different, I guess, perspective. 20 plus years in Microsoft development technology. I started off with BizTalk Server, believe it or not, way back in the day. And roughly 15 plus years in SharePoint from the 2003 days as well. I'm a Microsoft MVP, and I've had that title for the last 5+ years. And my focus in that area is around Office Server and Services and Visual Studio Development Technology. My interest is largely around process automation and efficiency. I spend a lot of my time there. Almost everything I do is in furtherance of that, and I try to further that with software development with artificial intelligence and machine learning. In terms of something that is non-technical, and I have this as a warning here on the screen for both myself and the audience, is being Jamaican born, I speak very fast. So yes, I'm born in Jamaica, and I'm also a former United States Marine. Excellent.
All right, so we're going to have some fun today.
Yep.
Before we get started, a little bit of word about Weden Digital. We are a consultancy, part of William Smith & Brown, that focus on helping organizations with mastering their cloud deployment, primarily on the Microsoft world, although we use a lot of other technology. We've done hundreds of Microsoft cloud deployments. We have a team of over 50+ consultants, which include project manager, engineers, data scientists, software developer, business analyst, and user experience designer. And we've been a Microsoft Gold partner for over 16 years. With that, here's the agenda that we're going to talk about today. The goal is to give you some insight about what is AI and how to apply artificial intelligence to fuel your digital workplace. We're going to start with an introduction about AI in general, really focusing on AI for business, right? Talk about some new development around RPA.
Absolutely.
I think Fabian's going to talk a lot about that. We'll take you through some sample use cases. I think that one of the big takeaway for us is, let's give you an example of how AI could be applied to your business. We'll have a few interesting demonstrations and take questions at the end. So with that, let's start our first poll. And we do that often when we talk about AI. We like to poll the audience about how you feel about artificial intelligence. So we're going to give everyone a few minutes to respond,
yeah.
And the answers are coming in. I think it's to be expected.
Exactly.
I think, it's a half and half, right?
Yeah, it always is, right, when it comes to AI.
Yeah, so a lot of people are excited. Nobody's scared, which is interesting. and half of the audience say positive and negative, and I think that's very common, right?
Yeah, it's usually telling. In terms of just the fact that AI can be both heavily lauded, and you get a smorgasbord of a different type of feelings towards it.
Great. All right, so let's keep going here. Thank you all for participating. And when you think about AI, Gallup survey organization, I've done a survey, and this one is about a year old, that really talk a lot about how Americans feel about the promise of AI, right?
Right.
A new poll from actually about 4 months ago expressed broad optimism about the emerging technology, but also fear, right? 80% of Americans say that AI so far have had a mostly positive and very positive impact. But interestingly enough, the same amount of people say that there's a fear that AI will eliminate more jobs than it creates, and will increase inequality, right?
But you'll see that as with almost anything, it's basically how you ask the question, right? If you get in basically the same amount of people responding in terms of percentage to the type of question, it's a matter of just perspective, which hopefully will translate in this webinar here today. So basically how you position it, how you embrace it within the organization, and how you roll it out.
And it's interesting when you hear a lot of the large technology organizations, Microsoft being one of them, they are thinking ahead about ethical use of AI, right? And it's going to be hard to enforce, right? Because they are creating platform that, of course, can be used for the good,
of course,
but not only for the good, of course.
Exactly right.
And that's one of the risks we're going to see. So let's start with a bit of terminology here. Artificial intelligence, often we call it AI. In the short answer, it's a computer system that can perform tasks that normally are performed by humans.
Exactly.
Right? So it's taking tasks that a human has to process, and teaching the computer how to do it. Machine learning is really a part of AI, but it's a field of the computer science that deal with giving computer system the ability to learn. We often talk about deep learning.
Right.
And that's important, without being explicitly programmed to do it.
Exactly, and we see a lot of this in terms of just a matter that this is such a proliferation of data out here today that machine learning has a better chance of success now because we're just keen on that data.
That's right.
Around RPA as well. RPA, you can think about if you remember the old macro days in Excel. This is basically just the next evolution of that. So in simple terminology, it's just basically the ability of a software or a robot using artificial intelligence to automate a step or a process along the way.
That's great. We're going to talk about that. This is a very fast emerging field in the area of intelligent process automation. It is, of course, fuel with AI behind the scene. All right, so in terms of introduction, I want to talk a bit about why AI is becoming so prevalent today. One is, if we think about what's happening in the world of business nowadays, we can name a survey from PwC that they've been doing for the last 20 years. And for the last 5 years, technology transformation, digital transformation, technology advances is one thing that keeps CEOs up at night, right? More than anything else in any other global trends.
Of course, yeah. CEOs right now today have to be very agile, very nimble. They have to make decisions, at the speed of business, and the speed of business is forever increasing.
A lot of people think about this next industrial revolution, right? That really started about a few years ago, and I think we can see that with this concept of blurring physical and digital divide.
Exactly.
I mean, I have teenager kids in my house, and I can tell you that the blur doesn't really exist, right? Physical and digital is one wall.
Exactly.
Right? And I think we're seeing that with younger generation, but we're going to start to see that more in businesses, right? It's all becoming one and the same, and I think that's what people are calling the next industrial revolution, right? What's interesting is we've reached an inflection point, and I'm going to talk a few minutes about that. I think a lot of people ask us, why is AI and machine learning happening now, right? I remember going to school in the late 80s in college, and we were already talking about artificial intelligence, right? So those concepts aren't that new, but I feel we reached an inflection point over the last couple of years. So why now? When you think about it, AI is not new, right? We've been talking about artificial intelligence for a long time, over 100 years. It's been a journey where technology will enhance and augment human capability. That's really what artificial intelligence is all about. The first calculator came in 1877. AT&T had a machine in 1939 called the Border machine, which started, creating frontier of deep learning back in the days. A first robot that was reasoning came out in 1969. The first graphical user interface was released in 81. A voice recognition system started in 92. And the first self-driving car came in 1994, right? So those things are new.
Yeah,
but why now, right? I think there's a lot of things that have happened over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
First, data scientists created very powerful algorithms.
Mm-hmm.
And unlike in previous generation, they published their world as open source,
mm-hmm.
right? So if you're a data scientist today, it's very unlikely that you're going to write any algorithm. You're going to take one that's been developed, tested, and works really well.
Right, and I think to your point, languages like Python, languages like R, SAS have become mainstream in this space. A lot of software engineers are doing it. A lot of data scientists are doing it in terms of that discipline. But to your point, compute power, big data, huge players in this.
Huge players, and back on the algorithm, I think we'll see the advances around deep learning and
mm-hmm.
neural networks that are all now available. Compute powers, of course, to do AI, you need massive amount of computing power, right? And before the cloud, nobody could just generate that power, right? Or afford to buy so much power.
Right, but it's interesting though, because the same, I think the polling showed, where we said we had people, that are excited, there are people that are not excited, and even from the PwC chart as well. The same thing that happened in terms of the cloud, where people say, okay, I'm not going to take my stuff from on-premises and move it to the cloud. There was fear there as well.
Yes.
However, we had to adapt, we had to move forward, and businesses had to recognize that in order to compete in this place, they had to go there, right? I usually tell people hybrid, is basically the new norm. There is no on-premises anymore. There's always a hybrid. In the same area where you said that there's now that melding of the physical and the digital, same thing again.
Yes. The last key trend of why now is the big data trend.
Yep.
We have now the ability to manage extremely large data sets, to perform algorithm and testing around those huge data sets, mm-hmm. as well as a lot of public data set is available. So we've accumulated a huge amount of data, which is critical mm-hmm. to train algorithm and to leverage AI.
Right.
It's all about the data and the way to process those.
But not only just big data from a static perspective, also streaming data. So, a lot of things in terms of real time. So as the data is coming in, the data is being acted upon.
So what is the impact to your business, right? Gartner Group estimate that 1.2 trillion estimated revenue will shift, not be eliminated, shift in AI. And what we mean by shift is go from doing manual process to something that's more automated, right? So instead of spending money on people, we're going to spend money on software developers and engineer to build that and create machine type solutions, right? But if you think about a business, think about 3 dimensions, right? AI really think about those 3 things. Number 1 is reasoning, right? It's taking your unique data and augment it in ways that you couldn't think about before, right? Everyone has data. We can use the machine to come to reason about this data.
Right, but also in terms of, if you take even businesses out there within the same industry, every business has their own vision, their own strategy in terms of how they're going to go about it, which means even though the data set may be similar, you do have to bring its own uniqueness to it in terms of just what you're bringing to market. So even 10 different people may have AI implemented and come up with 10 different ways of going about it efficiently.
Yes. The second level is understanding. And that, I think, one that we're starting to see. I mean, everyone has a mobile phone today with AI fuel into it, right? You put your picture, you know that there's face recognition happening on your picture, assuming that you allowed it.
Exactly.
And that's the concept of understanding, right? Let the machine interpret business and customer data in real time and scale to huge amount of data. And that's including text, document, image, video, voice, right? All of that can be analyzed, understood, and matched faster than a human will ever be able to.
Yeah, I think one of the things that Microsoft did in a conference once, and I think they continue to do it today, is where someone's speaking in English on the stage, and that's basically being broadcasted everywhere else in the regional language.
That's available today.
Exactly, that's available right here today.
Real-time transcription. The next one is interaction, right? AI allow to remove technology barrier. We'll give you a few demonstrations today about interaction and both understanding and reasoning. And you create new ways to connect with employees and customers, right?
Absolutely.
We all think about enterprise bots, right? Chatbots are ways that are fueled by AI and machine learning. So if we think about the digital transformation, every digital transformation initiative have 4 outcomes, right? It's about engaging your customer, enabling your employees to perform better, transforming your product, and optimizing your operation. AI help in those 4 different areas. When it comes to engaging your customer, you all probably start to love and hate those bots, right? But guess what? Bots are now more intelligent. You're not actually, it's not a virtual agent. You're talking to a machine that can get things and get you to a piece of information very quickly. Exactly. AI also help you create a customized experience. If you go to a website now and you log in and you all use Netflix, there's a lot of AI behind Netflix to suggest things you should be watching. And Amazon, of course, with recommendation engine. Next is enabling your employees. I think this is something we do a lot here at Rhythm Digital. How can we empower employees to be more productive? To tap into your organization knowledge, and AI and machine learning and RPA help with that. Every business want to optimize their operation, getting deep insight, driving operational efficiency, and lastly, being able to predict, right? Predictive analytics, which use machine learning extensively, allow you to look at your historical data and predict what may happen in the future with a very high degree of confidence. Lastly, AI for every organization is something that will transform your product and services, help transform those products and services. Think about us. We're using AI to transform the type of services we do, to provide differentiated experiences, and to innovate in ways that just couldn't be done before. So let's take you quickly for a few use cases. We picked a few industries here. It's not exhaustive. There's plenty of example. But think about financial services, right? There's huge amount of opportunity of using AI to drive better efficiency. Think about underwriting if you're a bank, right? Servicing loans, handling delinquency, right? You can have algorithm go behind the scene and help you with credit history and look at your data. Financial modeling, of course, is big in retail banking, commercial banking, in trading, investment model. They've been early adopter of machine learning. They're continuing to using it. The goal is to improve the outcomes and increase revenue for those organizations. Like many organizations, enhancing your customer experience. In the case of financial, it's fraud detection, right? That's huge. You know that now a machine can go out and scan thousands and millions of transactions and detect something that looks like fraud, right? We know that the credit card company are using that effectively. We all receive notices on our phones that something looks suspicious, right?
It's more important today, not than ever, if you're traveling, to at least let the bank know that you're going to be traveling before you go.
Credit analytics, other example in the finance world, and marketing analytics, of course.
Certainly.
And some of that apply to other industry. If you look at that health, life science use case, Same concept here, many dimension. I think the excitement we see in AI is in image and picture recognition.
Yes.
Where you can teach a machine to start doing review of X-ray or other scan,
Right.
and supplement. We're talking about amplifying the human ability, right, to give a validation score based on that, right?
And I think IoT device analytics is also something that is really upfront as well too. The ability to understand this how much and how long you're going to keep a piece of device in production.
In the manufacturing
exactly.
world, of course, in construction
Very key.
industry. Media and entertainment have lots of application. We've talked about, too fast here, sorry for that. Recommendation engine, and think about your organization, right? Predictive analytics, sentiment analysis. And now we kind of take all of this and say, hey, how does that apply to the digital workplace, right? So we talk about IPA, intelligence process automation. I think Fabian is going to talk more about RPA in a moment as well. Think about any operation that involves huge amount of manual processing. Right? I think in the insurance industry, claims processing of contract, right? If you're an industry that process a lot of contract, why don't you let the machine read the contract for you, extract the key terms, and then you can be sure that you haven't missed anything, right? And find for patterns of important terms that you should pay attention to. Virtual agent, this is probably the first place that most organizations, most of our clients are looking for help on. It's driving more self-service, question and answer. There's a lot of folks in many organizations, employees, divisions, departments that spend a huge amount of time answering the same question over and over. And sure, you may have an intranet, right, that has Q&A in it, yet people don't go there. You may have a search engine, yet it's too hard. I think people are getting more accustomed to asking Siri or your Alexa at home a question and get an answer. Guess what? You can do that inside your organization. Right. We built a solution to ask your human resource department, IT, finance, and it handles common question and scenarios as well. The next step is content classification. We all inundated with data, right? Too much documents, too much data. Why don't we let the machine classify this for us, right? Give us recommendation. If you guys use Office 365, you probably have seen that every day, right? It's a lot of machine learning behind the scene, a lot of AI that suggests documents, right? Suggests content for you.
Highly contextual as well. If you're using Office 365 ecosystem right now and you log into portal.office.com, oftentimes you'll see the things that you're working on or the last few things that you're working on. But not only that, if you're within a department, the structure on Active Directory is that you have your managers and then direct reports, and those direct reports are your peers. You'll also see things that your peers are working on that you have the ability to just get insights from. To let you know. Basically, the word that Microsoft likes to use is discover. So it's no longer search; it's discovery. It knows that all of these touch points are there, and it's allowing you to discover.
So other example that brings all of this together would be, think about your accounts payable department. Let's imagine that you receive an invoice. Invoice gets scanned. That technology exists for a long time. However, it gets scanned, data content gets classified. There's a machine learning algorithm that runs for the invoice that detects who it is from and suggests who the person should be responsible to approve that invoice.
Exactly.
Right? That's taking it a step further down, and that's really what IPA or intelligent process automation is all about. Of course, every organization would like to know what the future is like. Think about ways to get your transactional data, your credit data, your receivable data, to give you instant aspect of which one of my customers is likely to default or not pay my bills, right? Or what is my projection revenue in the next year based on what we've seen the pattern in the past, right? All of that is available. And then for many organizations that are very consumer or customer focused, being able to understand what's happening online, right? That's a great early use of sentiment of AI is called sentiment analysis, right? detecting if a tweet is
Exactly.
positive or negative.
Yeah, I do a demo on this at my Microsoft conferences, and I use Microsoft Flow with Azure Cognitive Services here. And what the takeaway that I usually say from that presentation is the fact that you can be reactive and proactive. Of course, as you mentioned before, somebody sending out tweets out there, this is something that you have no control of. However, you can react to it. So by having the cognitive services analyze those tweets and then put it inside of Microsoft Flow or some other engine to give to act on it. Basically, so and even if it's positive, it could be a matter of just retweeting that, right? Or it could be if it's something that is perceived negative, then you could basically act on it to change that customer experience.
That's awesome. Yeah. So let's talk next about a great practical use of AI. And I think that this field of robotic process automation, really, I heard about it probably 2 years ago the first time. So it's very, very recent. Fabian, I know you're very passionate about this. Yeah, take us through what RPA is all about.
Right. So I guess, as we said before, RPA is not new. It's a new term, but it's certainly not new. These are things that you used to do before back in your Excel macro days. The difference is that we'll just walk around the different pillars that we see here. The things I want to key off is a user interface providing support. So ideally here, what we're talking about is a person sitting behind a computer that's doing work it could either be mundane or just busy work, if you will. And the idea here is that you have a person that can basically take a series of action that's going around, and the user interface is there to help them. Now, what RPA does, it says, okay, let's record that user interface, abstract away what the things people are doing, which could be opening a browser, logging in, typing in information, or inside of an Excel chart, taking information and putting it in, or reading it from it to put it in somewhere else. And then either recording that or allowing you, through the user interface, the tooling itself, the RPA tooling, to create flow charts or sequences where you're basically either starting from scratch or from recording in order to get that done. The idea there is that what you want to do is you want to allow the robot to run the application on your behalf. So rather than you sitting back there doing multiple things, what you often find in this space now is that you either have one or more computers that are out there basically acting on behalf of the human being. The person could be receiving information, again, working in terms of big data, or it could be keying in information that it sees based on what the human person would normally do. And the idea here is that if it's repetitive, it can be automated. And if it can be automated, then you can have RPA do it. The idea, or what I like to tell people is that the human interaction here should now be around the context of exceptions. So, not the human beings going there and keep clicking away and stuff. Have the robot do that, but if there's an exception, then let's get the human eyes behind it.
Got it. Great explanation.
So, in terms of some of the practical uses, again, what you want to have is you want to be able to record something, to program it, to execute behind it, and to share it, socialize it, so that other people can start to use it. And again, we're going to talk about center of excellence a little bit later on, which is where Sharon will come in. But the idea there is that what we want to do from an outcome perspective is to accelerate benefits from the digital transformation that it creates. We talked about before, improving customer experience, and one of the key things here is that as you engage with your customers, you want to be fast, you want to be accurate. From an employee perspective as well, one of the things that, especially when I speak to people, is I talk to people about errors, omissions. How do you manage and mitigate? How do you mitigate risk? And the idea there is that if you have a human being behind a computer doing something, not to say that they're not effective, but they're not consistent. And when you don't have consistency, that opens up the room for those errors and omission. So having a robot do it is going to be predictive. And if it's not predictive, or if it's an exception, then you put the human eyes behind it. Great. From employee satisfaction or engagement, here's where it's a little bit more squishy. This is the part where I think the poll comes in, where people are either scared or they're extremely excited, because now you're talking about your employees that you have within the organization. The idea here, and the thing that I like to emphasize, is that it opens up the opportunity for the employee to be doing things of value rather than just things that are just busy. So they can be more free thinking. They can be making key decisions rather than just sitting there typing away.
That's right.
So, the questions that you should be asking yourself here, I think, how can RPA help me? I believe everyone on this webinar here today should actually have something here on this board that they can identify with. I know that we have a lot of director and C-level individuals here attending here today. So rapid ROI is something that's going to be key right here. Nothing brings you greater ROI than the space of RPA, because once you've made an initial purchase, a couple of things are happening. One, you may be investing in terms of infrastructure, in terms of getting that RPA software and having computers set up designated to do that work. However, now you're able to scale. So if your throughput of data is being managed more efficiently, then your ROI gets increased.
So you can grow your business without essentially hiring more people.
Exactly.
RPA will kind of allow you to grow, and of course, there's the cost, right? I mean, RPA doesn't come magically, right? You need to program it, you need people to maintain the programming. But like you said, Fabian, this is to enhance what employees are doing.
Exactly, not to replace, exactly. And you can do it. That's fine, that's fine. One more thing, and then we can jump from the slides. One of the things overarching place as well is that it's not also the ability to just have it there. The ability to scale up and scale down is also lends efficiency as well. So you get improved service delivery, increased compliance, cost reduction, because you don't need to build it out and have it there forever. Oftentimes at conferences, what you'll find is that people will have, or the organization will have a set of computers through that registration phase or through that downtime phase, but as the conference is live, you'll see them scale up. So you get that customer experience. People are seeing things fast, things are clicking, and things are moving, and then you can ramp down again. So you're able to manage that cost based on just the frequency of how your business operates.
Right. And you're going to give us a lot of example about use of RPA in the finance and accounting, right? Because that's a place where people have started very quickly.
Right. So, from RPA to better process execution, there's usually a map that you can follow. In terms of this, if you use from a financial perspective, the scope of an audit. When you look at an audit and you're talking about a pre-RPA days, basically you're sending individuals to organizations to perform this audit. And in terms of just how a human can just ingest that information, you can clearly see the numbers. Less than 10% of volume. But with an RPA device, you're going to get approximately 10% in terms of terms, because as you mentioned before, Daniel, the RPA or the machine learning can ingest that data in droves, in volumes. So in terms of the benefit that you're going to get, it's certainly going to be around the compliance aspect of it. I'm just going to skip down to the bottom, and talk about manual errors. The idea here again around errors and omission. This is certainly key. The time, type into time in error is increased with a human being based on just fatigue, repetition. People get distracted. With a post-RPA, you have that human-robot collaboration. And again, the key term here is collaboration. You're not replacing the human. You're just allowing the human to step in at a certain point in that field. And of course, you get increased accuracy.
Right. And take us through a few examples here, because I think that, when I first heard about RPA, that sounded very great to me, right? But essentially what we're saying is, let's take a process that's manual.
Right.
Someone goes into that computer system, enter that information, copy paste, go in this system, and enter that same information or partially some information.
Right.
That's a great use case, right?
It's a fantastic use case, right? And you can see things here. No organization is a monolith. And but every organization is taking in money and they're paying out money, right? So, and you usually have departments that lend themselves to that. In terms of also financial plan analysis, that could be done by someone else. Payroll could be handled by someone else. But the idea is that you may have disparate systems that are tied towards the entire finance and accounting practice of your organization. So what you're trying to do here is from automated complex journal entries, managing non-electronic data interchange invoices, performing 2 to 3 way invoice matches, validating invoices. It goes to your point before in terms of just the compliancy and making sure that you don't have errors and omission. These are all areas where to your example before, people usually take information from an Excel workbook in one area, copy that information into another Excel workbook just because you're moving from accounts payable to accounts receivable. That goes away with RPA, because with RPA, you point it to the Excel sheet in one area, you point it to the other, and the robot goes out and take that information, ingest it, put it into another system by either filling out the form that's there or going directly into the system itself.
And because again, it learns. And because there's machine learning and AI behind in those capabilities,
absolutely,
it gets better over time, and you can monitor and tweak it, right? So,
every transaction is a learning opportunity for that robot.
Excellent. So how do we, get started, and what's been your experience, Fabian, in terms of governance around RPA?
So I speak about center of excellences, and in almost, I'm here as a principal within the organization, and I manage the intelligent process automation practice. Within the intelligent automation practice, I talk about the centers of excellence, even around digital process automation, but around the AI and the IPA, it's basically an extension of that. The idea is that you want to start out with a centralized knowledge management. Again, I think you spoke about earlier the fact that AI and ML helps you with corporate memory, leveraging the information that you already had before. So having this centralized provides the ability for human beings and the robots to have a place where that's where organization is just going to grow. Right. You may have specific RP around functional areas, like we talked about the accounting practice. You may have it around employee and HR practice. And then you also have connectivity and infrastructure, and compliance as well, in terms of the center of excellence, where you train the robot to work in a certain area. You have your employees benefit from that area. And of course, training and development is also important because there's a human element in there as well. You want to make sure that your employees are properly trained in RPA and know how to use it in order to become better in terms of what they're doing.
Great. And who are the main vendor in this space, Fabian?
Right. So there's key people out there that are leading this space. UiPath and Blue Prism are top of mind. UiPath is a huge company out there in Seattle. Blue Prism is also a huge player in this space. The one thing I'd like to mention, again, from the IPA practice and the managers, that UiPath, as an independent software vendor, has relationships with other business process automation, business process management vendors as well, namely K2. And Nintex recently acquired a company, Foxtrot as well, in terms of RPA. So what you're seeing here is even traditional business process software vendors like K2 and your Nintex, they're partnering or they're working with these RPA vendors to augment it. And again, the idea here is that even though you may have a workflow that may be processing things here and there, and you have human actors, where these human actors fit that equation, there's opportunities there to put a robot in its place and then have the exceptions be managed by human beings.
And it's likely that soon we're going to see the big players, Amazon, Microsoft, are probably going to get in that space as well.
Absolutely.
We do have a relationship, and we're partner of UiPath and Nintex, right?
Exactly.
So those are some of the two leading vendors, in that space as well. Very interesting. All right, so let's launch our second part here. Hopefully, we haven't lost anyone here. We'd love to hear, where do you see AI benefiting your organization? And if you think about it, it's all about productivity and efficiency here, right? So let's see the poll are coming here. And as expected, I think everyone sees a lot of common benefits here, right? All of the above, 84%. That's what we expected. So with this introduction, we want to start out getting a bit more specific. First of all, how does AI applies for many of you? Right? We've talked about the generic context. There's a lot of things that we all want to do, but we have to start somewhere, right? And when we tell our clients where to think about AI, one is you're going to see AI being infused into the application you use every day. I'm going to give some demonstration of using Excel and PowerPoint, which now have built-in AI capability. More is coming from the Microsoft world. But if you think about your digital workplace, your digital environment at your organization, right? Number one that comes to mind is bots and Q&A, right? You can find in your organization processes that involve calling HR to ask the same question over and over, right? That could be easily automated with a personalized experience with a bot. Right. and guide people, not saying replace, but guide people to the right answer.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, natural language query, that's basically key right now.
Yeah, yeah. Content classification is probably the next frontier as well, right? People have a lot of content, sure, we can tag them into, a knowledge management system, but can we use cognitive services from Microsoft or Azure or Google or whoever to help tag content, right? And when content is tagged, it's easily discoverable.
Right, and I think human bias plays a role into this as well. Sometimes people look at something and the brain trains itself to either, disregard certain things and focus on a certain thing. The one thing that an AI can do, it looks at everything. So the classification grows because it's actually inspecting every pixel on that image and giving you a better classification than you could ever do as a human being.
All right, so I'm going to bring my computer here. I think we're going to tentatively get into some demonstration here. But before we do that, you can also see, for instance, Office 365 has AI-driven security monitoring now in Azure as well, right? So you're seeing AI being fueled into security as well. And lastly, we are working with a few clients to create predictive analytics model. One about forecasting revenue, about forecasting, maintenance on machines. So those are the things that are practically available today and can be done relatively easily and in a short amount of time. So let's talk about, and let's take a few examples here. I'm going to start with my favorite, right? Because I do a lot of presentation, you would imagine I spend a lot of time in PowerPoint. So I'm going to take a PowerPoint here that I've created. It's a boring slide. It doesn't look too interesting. And because I'm a technologist, I'm not the most creative person. Well, fortunately for me, Microsoft came to the rescue here with this new concept here called design ideas. I'm going to highlight it for everyone here so that you can see it. Design ID is in the design function here. Maybe I need to get a better pen here. It's here, right? And it's provide the ability to let the system guide us through some great idea. So let's click on it and let's give it a few seconds. So what has happened now? Now you have to opt in for this feature. Why? Because technically you are sending your content. Remember my first slide, I'm saying huge amount of data, massive amount of cloud processing. Guess what? I don't have enough power on my computer to run for the algorithm to detect that. Exactly. So what I've done is I've taken the content of this slide and other slide, sent it to an Azure-based services hosted by Microsoft that analyzed what I was putting in here and came back and gave me some design ideas. Now, look at what it did. It's giving me ideas of how to best format this slide, right? Yep. Let's say I kind of like this one, right? Or maybe I like this one better.
Actually, I like the one with the images because if you look, it's contextual.
Yes.
So the language that you have there lends itself. Right. The images are basically lending itself to what you're talking about. So you can see the idea.
Is not random.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Right. And this one is interesting. It's a case study. Hey, we have an image that kind of talk about a case study as well. Right. That's a service that, by the way, has been available for almost a year. It's getting improved constantly. It's learning. You can give it feedback when you like or not like what's been done. Of course, you have to be careful because you are sending content securely to Microsoft, and you can look at here by the power by Office Intelligence Services, right? We're going to start seeing a lot of AI capability in your day-to-day work, right? So that's PowerPoint. Now, I also tend to also use a lot of Excel, and I have a very boring Excel chart here. That's a little bit too much zoom. It's a table of sales and rating of some product in my company, right? Again, I can start thinking about graph and maybe I want to create a report and give that information. But similarly to design idea, Microsoft released in December of last year the concept of ideas, still in preview here, powered by the same service, which essentially will take your data, analyze it. It's doing it now. It's doing that in the cloud. and coming back to me with what's the best representation or one of the best representation of this particular table graphically.
And
right?
it's not exclusive. You can do one tab with talking about one and use another tab for the other.
Now, could I figure this out? Yeah, sure. I think a bar graph I could have. This one is more interesting. The correlation between sales and rating. And by the way, it's telling us not only that it found something, it detected an outlier here, right? So, radar chart with correlation is not something that anyone can do in Excel, right? You have to understand those concepts. But guess what? This one was able to just take my data and say, you know what? We have something here that's really an outlier here, right? It's an expensive item that ranked, pretty low for the expense, right? So, you need to pay attention to this one as well. So again, this is AI fuel capability, right? I think that there's really nothing. You have to have Office 365 Pro Plus, and you will get those anywhere. You'll see more in Word soon. One of my favorite features in Word that is going to happen soon is the ability to pick up content from other documents that is similar. It's going to come to PowerPoint as well. That's a big struggle with some of us that provides a lot of deliverables. We know we've done it in the past.
Much data.
We can't find it. Let's highlight the sentence. Let the system go find a slide that look at this and propose 5 slides or 5 tables that's stored in my SharePoint or Teams environment, right? So you're going to see a lot of those things. So this is, again, practical use of AI capability. The next one is I want to talk a little bit about bots, right? This is a Microsoft Team bot. It's called the Who bot. The Who bot is a bot that was programmed to go out into your company directory and find information. And I don't know who Fabian is, but I want to find out about Fabian. So I'm going to type, who is Fabian Williams? And the system will, of course, go out and find Fabian in my company directory. Here we are. What is Fabian Williams' phone number? Same thing, right? I can find this. And I can go out and say, who does Fabian work with, right? Now, it doesn't mean that they're related to each other, but they've interacted with each other as well, right? So this is a bot that goes out and find information, right? This one is almost out of the box, right? But you can think of a lot of other bots, right? I talk about Q&A, that's the similar, that's probably the easiest thing to do. But how about bots that interact with your data, right? So one other example is to find a bot that will talk to my CRM system, right? So I can go out and find, assuming I have it somewhere here, my Dynamics bot. I can go out and ask, what are my open opportunity, right? Now we're getting into more complex bots that will actually go out to a backend system. And of course, it didn't find the answer, so bad question here. But you see here that so the system find some information here. I can click on it, and it will go out and find some opportunity here, give me a view I can pick up, and the system keep opening and interacting with my Dynamics product, right? So again, bots that you can program to not just answer questions, but start talking with your backend system, right? So those are examples of things you can do today. Some does not require anything, like the use of Microsoft Office. Some require some coding, intelligent bot. Microsoft has a lot of capability with their bot framework, their Q&A maker, their natural language processing called Lewis, that allow you to jumpstart those activity. We have started about 3 or 4 projects now with existing clients to help them, drive better productivity by creating purposeful bots, right? We like this, that bots have to have a purpose, right?
Solving a problem.
Solving a problem, enhancing, maybe it's relieving our HR department and things like that as well.
Yeah.
And then Fabian, I know you've done a few of those demos as well. We have an example of a image library in a SharePoint site that needs to be tagged, right?
Right, and this is something that you see all the time in your electronic content management system. In this case, SharePoint. You may have an image library, and this image could be coming from several different sources. And the idea here is that you want to make sure that your users, one, have the ability to find them, because it's not only about putting stuff into SharePoint, it's also getting it back when you need it. And to Dana's point earlier, you can have images that are collected, and then you, the human actor, would have to go in behind it and tag it. What if you could basically tie that into automatic classifications? Again, feed in your metadata by the use of Azure Cognitive Services. This is something that Microsoft also showcased at a few of their conferences so far. And the idea here is that as you have information inside your images library, you can actually, once it goes into SharePoint, you can have a Microsoft flow that's being triggered off, and that Microsoft flow can leverage Azure Cognitive Services. It does an image analysis, and in this example right here, you have a picture of a building with a sky. And if you look to the right-hand side in this deck, you can actually see the degree of accuracy or the confidence in terms of saying, okay, there's sky, there's outdoor, there's a building, there's a city, potential factory, and it gives you in terms of the degree, the 99 percentiles, all the way down to 30 percentiles in terms of daytime, because you can see it's somewhat overcast, so it doesn't know. So the idea here, the takeaway, is that what you're going to do is grow that metadata. So if someone is now, the practical use case here is that somebody now is searching for something inside SharePoint or Microsoft Search, and they use any of these key items, a city, a building, outdoor, they can now get something that they would not normally find, depending on how the human person would tag it. Again, the more information that you have, the better. And the faster you can get it, the more productive you are.
And the way we've created this demonstration, Fabian, is we leverage Microsoft Cognitive Services, which is one component of the Azure platform, which essentially is something that we can give terms and say, it's already been trained.
Right.
We didn't have to train the model.
Exactly.
Right? The Cognitive Services is trained to detect patterns, sky, outdoor, building. Of course, we can train it with our own data set and make it better, but it's pre-trained. All we have to do is connecting to our image library using Microsoft Flow, write a little bit of code here and there, and voila, we have automatic classic content classification.
Exactly.
The same can be done using the text or sentiment analysis. Right? Text will allow us to find patterns of content into a Word or PDF document as well.
Exactly.
Great.
Quick question.
Yes.
It's relevant. Is this already offered by SharePoint?
So the question is, yes. So it's not directly. I mean, SharePoint will have location awareness.
Well, so you can, currently right now you can do this in SharePoint. If you go to, we can provide a link later on. So there's a startup pack that's on Microsoft GitHub, because the library, the typical image library doesn't have all of the fields to do exactly what you're seeing here. But there's a startup pack that once you pull it down, it'll basically provide you the necessary fields inside your image library that will allow you to be able to do exactly this. So what you can do in Flow is out of the box, but the library right now is not set up to do this unless you have that starter pack.
And I want to address one of the earlier questions we had this morning about, that's overwhelming, especially for small businesses, right? How can small business still take advantage of the benefits of AI? And that's a great question, right? If you're a massive financial institution, of course, you have billions of dollars in R&D budget. You can do all those things. As a small or medium-sized business, it's more challenging.
Exactly.
Here's the good news, right? All of those concepts of machine learning, training models, you'll be able to tap into services, right? Everyone has heard about IBM Watson, right? You can rent the algorithm that fuel IBM Watson as a service, the same way that Microsoft has cognitive services and other natural language processing services or image recognition services. You can tap into those. What's difficult is tying everything together, right? Also, so small business can look at ISV or software vendor that are providing purpose-built software, right? There are a few companies out there that have provided AP recognition, automation, AI-fueled software, right? A very strong purpose of we're going to solve some of the commonly issued in accounts payable.
Right.
So smaller business will probably look at existing software, right? They're not going to be able to build it. Medium-sized business probably will want to, leverage our help and potentially build it.
Right.
And for bots as well.
Right, but before we move off this topic, one of the things I want to say just to address that question as well is that the benefit of working in a Microsoft ecosystem, either if you're just doing standard Azure or if you're doing something with Office 365 or even Dynamics, is that you, on a per user licensing basis, you can leverage this. So you could basically grow at your own scale. So in this solution specifically, if you could, once you have an Office 365 tenant and subscription, you in essence have Azure. So then you can start to leverage the Azure Cognitive Services and pay for that specific workload. Depending on your on whether you have Dynamics or Office 365, you also have a flavor of Microsoft Flow, and you also have the concept of Azure Functions as well. So whether you are you have a developer stack and you have a set of people that can work with this from an Azure Function perspective, writing code to tap into cognitive services, or you have basically people who are productivity users that can just use Microsoft Flow. There's a solution there for you using this as well.
It's great. And we could come up with a lot of more examples, but I think, we wanted to give you some insight about things that can be done. And I think we have a poll next. We'd love to hear about, from the audience, and that's interesting for us about, when do you think you're going to start thinking about AI, right? I'm going to give my answer is if you haven't started, it's already late, right? So, everyone should have that in their radar. If you're in the financial function, if you're a leader of your organization, you have to ask yourself the question, what can I use AI, machine learning, RPA to my benefit, right?
Exactly.
Because if not, your competitors are going to do it.
Right. You already have this data. You already have the tooling out there. Make it work for you.
So some are already thinking about it, and many are not sure, and some say 12 months from now. Yeah, so that's a widespread of people, and I'm glad to see that a third of the folks here on this call are already doing it or considering it. That's great to hear. So with that, I think we're going to be taking in a few questions in a couple of minutes, but here's the next step for all of you, right? One is, to understand AI, machine learning, you have to, if you have IT folks in your organization or a large IT team, ask them to broaden their skills, right? If you're in the data space, statistical modeling is a critical element missing to be able to understand large databases, right? Otherwise,
the good thing is that some of the skills that you have from statistical modeling can be just leveraged against this as well. If you if you do statistical modeling, and you have as Daniel mentioned before, developers or programmers on your team, they already know SAS. They're if not, they probably already know Python, or you're developing inside R. The same knowledge that they have in that space can be brought into this space, and you're halfway or even more than halfway there.
Right. A lot of organizations, a lot of our clients are starting to think about pilot projects, right? Let's find one use case for many organizations is automating some of their back office functions, right? HR is a perfect element for an organization or perfect department for an organization to be a good candidate to say, let's replace this, large handbook that people never read with a more Q&A bots that people can ask questions.
Exactly.
Right? And those questions can be smart, how much PTO balance do I have, right? Well, it depends. It depends on who you are. The system may detect who you are, go to your HRIS system, create the balance, and give you the answer, right? So it's not just plain text question and answer. It could be interaction with other systems.
Yeah, expense reporting is another one as well.
Yeah. Expense reporting. Uploading, process of content, I mean, we certainly see opportunity in this space where, functions that are commonly used in an intranet may and will get replaced with bots, over time as well. And then, of course, stay updated, right? I'm going to insist here, this is a space that's moving extremely fast, right? When you think about the offering of the big cloud provider, AWS, Azure, Google, they are adding new capability almost on a quarterly basis.
Exactly.
Either they're enhancing it, or all of a sudden they have a new, recognition service that didn't exist before,
Exactly.
right? So keep updated. We are doing our, job in educating the marketplace and keeping people up to date, and we'll continue to do that for our blog. But staying ahead is critical.
Indeed.
So with that, I think we're almost running out of time here. We would love to keep the conversation going. We're happy to meet with everyone that attending the webinar today. So those of you that missed it as well, sign up for time where myself, Fabian, either the two of us or one individually will spend time with you in the organization, talk about, answer questions about what we covered today, and maybe uncover one or two opportunities that could make a huge impact into what you do today and what you will do in the future. So with that, I think we've answered most of the questions. Well, I think there was one more question we did not talk about around, which provider is offering this. So if you look at the major provider, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and Google, they all have complementary offering, and I will put IBM in that boat as well. Some are stronger than others. Some are easier to use depending on what you use. But it's frankly something that we've seen across all the providers.
Yeah, and a lot of this is vendor agnostic in terms of what we're talking about as well.
Great. All right. So if there's no other question, thank you everyone for joining us today.
It's been fun.
We've enjoyed, teaching you more about what's happening in the world of artificial intelligence. We'd love to hear from you if you can, if you want to give us some feedback, and we'll look forward to working with you in the future.
Yeah. See you on the next webinar.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.